The Grand Assembly Hall was the largest room in the known galaxy. It sat at the center of Station Prime, a massive space station that floated between three dead stars. Every important species had a seat here. Over 300 different alien races sent their best diplomats to speak, argue, and make decisions that affected trillions of lives. Today the hall was full. Every seat was taken. The air buzzed with whispers and clicks and sounds that human ears could never understand. Floating screens showed translations for those who could not speak the common tongue. Light from distant nebulae poured through the glass ceiling, painting the room in shades of purple and gold. Ambassador Vel stood at the center podium. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like wet stone. His eyes were completely black, and when he spoke, his voice was smooth, like water flowing over rocks. He represented the Turani Dominion, one of the oldest and most powerful groups in the galaxy. "My fellow delegates," Vel said, spreading his forearms wide, "I bring before you Resolution 7742, a motion that is long overdue." The screens around the room flickered. Text appeared in hundreds of languages. The resolution was simple: ban humanity from all galactic trade routes, diplomatic channels, and colonized systems. Remove them from the galactic community entirely. "The humans have been among us for 200 years now," Vel continued. 200 years of watching them stumble through the stars like children. 200 years of waiting for them to prove they belong here. He paused. "They have not." A ripple of agreement moved through the chamber. Many delegates nodded their heads, or whatever body parts served the same purpose. Delegate Olin of the Mirathi Consortium stood up from his seat. He was short and round, covered in bright blue fur. His species was known for their sharp minds and even sharper tongues. "I support this resolution," Olin said loudly. "The humans are an embarrassment. Look at their biology. They cannot breathe underwater. They cannot survive in the vacuum of space for even 1 minute. They cannot regrow lost limbs. They are blind to most light spectrums, deaf to most sound frequencies." Laughter echoed through the chamber. Several delegates joined in with their own observations. "They require sleep," one called out. 8 hours of unconsciousness every single day. "How has natural selection not destroyed them?" "They come from a death world," another added. "A planet that actively tries to kill them. Extreme weather, predators, diseases, poison plants. And they are proud of this. They think it makes them special. They live barely 100 years, Olan continued, his voice rising with amusement. "Some of us in this room are over 2,000 years old. By the time a human learns anything useful, they are already dying. What can such a short-lived species possibly offer the galaxy?" Ambassador Vel nodded along with each point. "Exactly. The humans are fragile, primitive, limited. They have no natural weapons. No armor, no special abilities. The only remarkable thing about them is that they somehow survived long enough to reach space at all." The chamber erupted in laughter once more. In the back of the room, a single figure remained silent. High Arbiter, Kira, of the Neutral Worlds, sat in her elevated chair, watching everything with ancient eyes. Her species had been among the first to achieve space travel millions of years ago. They no longer took sides in galactic politics. They only observed and kept records. But today, something was different. Kira's face showed no amusement. Her expression was troubled. "The vote will now begin," Vel announced. "All in favor of Resolution 7742, banning humanity from the galactic community, please signal your weight." The single word cut through the noise like a blade. The chamber fell silent. Every eye, every sensor, every attention focused on High Arbiter Kira as she rose from her seat. "Before you vote," Kira said, her voice calm but heavy with something none of them could name, "I must ask you to watch something." Vel's black eyes narrowed. "With respect, High Arbiter, the Neutral Worlds do not participate in votes. You have no standing to delay these proceedings." "I am not delaying," Kira replied. "I am providing evidence. That is within my rights as record keeper." She raised one slender hand. In her palm, a small device glowed with soft blue light. 6 cycles ago, the Black Veil sector went silent. We all know why. The Harrow Swarm conquered it. 11 civilizations fell to them before that. 11 species were absorbed. Their populations turned into mindless drones for the hive. The mood in the chamber shifted. The Harrow Swarm was not a joke. They were a nightmare that had haunted the galaxy for centuries. Many delegates had lost friends, colonies, entire worlds to the swarm. What does this have to do with the humans? Vel demanded. Everything. Kira walked slowly toward the center of the room. 3 weeks ago, a human colony ship entered the Black Veil sector by accident. Navigation error? 40,000 civilians. 1 small military escort. She stopped at the main display console. The swarm found them. The chamber was completely silent now. Everyone knew what happened when the swarm found prey. Surrender or die. Those were the only options. And surrender just meant a slower death. I have obtained a recording of what happened next, Kira said. It was transmitted by the human survivors and intercepted by my observers. Survivors? Olan laughed nervously. There are no survivors when the swarm attacks. Kira looked at him for a long moment. Her ancient eyes held something that made the blue-furred delegate shrink back in his seat. Watch, she said simply. She inserted the device into the console. The lights in the chamber dimmed. The massive central screen flickered to life, and the video began to play. Nobody in that room would ever forget what they saw next. Nobody would ever look at humans the same way again. And when the vote finally came, not a single delegate would raise their hand against the strange, fragile, short-lived species from the death world called Earth. But they did not know that yet. For now, they only watched. And slowly their laughter died in their throats. The recording began with static. Then the image cleared, showing the bridge of a human starship. It was not fancy or advanced. The walls were plain metal. The screens showed simple displays. Everything looked functional but basic. This was not a warship. It was a colony vessel, built to carry families to new worlds. The name of the ship appeared at the bottom of the screen, Eternal Dawn. Captain Taiho Park stood in the center of the bridge. He was a man of average height, with short black hair and tired eyes. His uniform was slightly wrinkled. He had been awake for too long. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations, and every single one of them looked afraid. The alarms were screaming, Report, Taiho said. His voice was calm. To calm for the situation, Lieutenant Una Beak turned from her console. She was young, maybe 30 years old. Her hands were shaking, but her voice stayed steady. 17 contacts, Captain. Harrow Swarm hive ships. They have us surrounded. The delegates in the Grand Assembly Hall watched in silence. 17 hive ships. Even one was enough to destroy most fleets. 17 was overkill. 17 was a message. On the screen, a new window opened. It showed the view outside the Eternal Dawn. The hive ships hung in space like massive, organic nightmares. They were not built from metal like normal vessels. They were grown. Living ships made of flesh and bone and things that should not exist. Each one was covered in spines and tendrils. Each one was larger than the colony ship by a factor of 10. Do we have any weapons? Taiho asked. Una shook her head. We are a colony vessel, sir. We have point defense guns for asteroids. Nothing that could scratch a hive ship. What about the Han River? The screen split to show a second ship. This one was smaller, sleeker. A military frigate with actual weapons. Commander Minho Choi appeared on a communication screen. He was older than Taiho, with gray at his temples and deep lines on his face. He had the look of a man who had seen too many battles. I am here, Captain, Minho said. But I have to be honest with you. My ship has 32 crew members, and enough firepower to maybe hurt one of those things. Maybe we are not going to win this fight. In the Grand Assembly Hall, Delegate Olan leaned forward. His earlier amusement was gone. Why are they even talking? He whispered to a nearby delegate. The swarm does not negotiate. You surrender or you die. Everyone knows this. As if answering his question, the main screen of the Eternal Dawn flickered. A new transmission was coming through. The image that appeared was disturbing even to the alien delegates, who had seen many horrors. It was the swarm's collective voice. A face made of thousands of smaller faces, all speaking at once. Dead eyes from absorbed species, all moving together. Mouths that had once belonged to living beings, now just puppets, the swarm said. The word came from every mouth at the same time. Absorb, become. That was the only communication the swarm ever sent. 3 words. Every species that heard those words had 2 choices: give up and let themselves be taken, their minds wiped clean and their bodies added to the hive, or fight and die and then be taken anyway. Captain Taiho did not respond to the swarm. Instead, he turned to Yuna.
How many civilians do we have on board?
40,000, sir. Men, women, and children. Families going to start new lives on Colony 7. Taiho closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, something had changed. The fear was still there, hidden deep. But on the surface, there was only cold determination. He opened a channel to the Han River. Minho, if you throw everything you have at them, how long can you keep them busy? Minho stared at him through the screen. He understood what Taiho was asking. He understood what it would cost. His crew of 32 would die, every single one of them, against 17 ships. Minho said quietly, I can give you 4 minutes. Maybe 5 if we are lucky. That is enough. Enough for what? Minho asked. There is nowhere to run. Their ships are faster than ours. Even if I buy you time, they will catch you. Taiho shook his head slowly. I am not running. In the Grand Assembly Hall, the delegates exchanged confused looks. Not running? What else was there? The swarm had never lost a target. Never. No species had ever escaped once the hive ship surrounded them. On the recording, Taiho turned to his crew. His voice was still calm, but now there was steel underneath the words. Yuna, begin evacuation protocols. I want every civilian moved to the main cargo bay. All of them. Tell them to bring nothing. Tell them to move fast. The cargo bay, sir. Why? Because we are going to save them? Taiho looked at the screen showing the swarm fleet. And then we are going to show these things what humans are made of. He pressed another button on his console. Engineering. Chief Kong, I need you on the bridge. Now, bring your tools. I have a job for you. Yuna hesitated. Captain, what are you planning? Taiho finally smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had made peace with something terrible. The swarm thinks they know what we are, he said. They think we are prey. They think we will kneel or break. He looked around at his crew, at the faces of people who had signed up to explore the stars, not to die in them. They are about to learn that humans do not go quietly. They are about to learn that even when we lose, we make sure our enemies remember the cost. The recording paused for a moment. Then it continued, and in the Grand Assembly Hall, 300 alien species watched in growing horror as they began to understand what humans truly were. The Han River moved first. Commander Minho Choi stood on his small bridge, surrounded by his crew of 32 souls. They were young, most of them. Fresh faces from the Naval Academy. They had signed up for adventure, for exploration, for the chance to see distant stars. None of them had expected this, but none of them hesitated. All hands, this is the Commander Minho, spoke into the ship-wide channel. His voice was quiet but steady. You all know the situation. 17 enemy vessels.
One of us.
The math is not in our favor. He paused, looking at the faces around him. Fear was there, yes, but something else too. Something that the watching aliens in the Grand Assembly Hall could not quite name. The Eternal Dawn carries 40,000 civilians, families, children, people who never asked to be here. If we do nothing, they all die. Or worse, they become part of that thing out there. He pointed at the screen showing the swarm fleet. I will not let that happen. I cannot let that happen. One of the younger officers, a woman barely out of training, raised her hand. What are your orders, Commander? Minho smiled at her. It was a gentle smile, the kind a father might give a child. We are going to buy them time. Every second we can. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we do not stop until there is nothing left of us to stop. We will die, another officer said. It was not a question. Yes, Minho agreed. We will die, but we will die free. We will die fighting. And we will take as many of those monsters with us as we can. He straightened his uniform. Anyone who wants to leave, I will not blame you. The escape pods are still functional. Nobody moved. Minho nodded slowly. Then let us show them what the human spirit looks like. All power to weapons and engines. Ramming speed. The Han River shot forward like a bullet. In the Grand Assembly Hall, the delegates watched in stunned silence. The small frigate did not run. It did not try to hide. It flew directly into the center of the swarm formation, guns blazing, missiles launched in waves. Railgun rounds tore through the darkness. Point defense cannons fired so fast, they became streams of light. The Han River twisted and spun through the hive ships, dodging tendrils and spines, always moving, always firing. The first hive ship tried to grab them with its massive organic claws. Minho flew straight through its grasp, his ship scraping against the flesh of the beast. He fired everything he had into its eye, the central node that controlled its nervous system. The hive ship screamed. The sound traveled through the void somehow, a psychic cry of pain that every being in the sector could feel. Then it went dark, dead, drifting. One down, Minho said calmly. 16 to go. Keep firing. Two more hive ships closed in from either side. There was no escape. The Han River was trapped between walls of living nightmare. Minho did not try to escape. Engineering overload the reactor. All power to forward shields. We are going through. The Han River accelerated even faster. It hit the first hive ship like a missile made of metal and fire. The impact tore through the organic hull, deep into the creature's body. Then the reactor exploded. The blast consumed the Han River. It also consumed the hive ship they had struck. And the shockwave hit two more nearby vessels, cracking their hulls, killing thousands of swarm drones inside in 4 minutes. 32 humans had destroyed 4 hive ships. The Grand Assembly Hall was completely silent. Some delegates had stopped breathing. Others had covered their eyes. This was not how prey behaved. This was not how the weak died, but the recording continued. The real horror was still coming. On the eternal dawn, Captain Taiho watched the Han River explode. His face showed no emotion, but his hands gripped the armrest of his chair so hard, his knuckles turned white. They bought us the time, he said quietly. Do not waste it. Chief Engineer Do-Yan Kong had arrived on the bridge. He was a large man with rough hands and grease stains on his uniform. He had spent 30 years building ships, fixing ships, and understanding ships. Now Taiho was asking him to break one. The modifications are done, Captain, Do-Yan reported. The cargo bay is now a separate unit. I have installed emergency thrusters and a basic navigation system. It can fly on its own for a few hours. And the main ship? Do-Yan hesitated. I have rerouted all remaining power to the engines. When you give the order, we will have full speed. But there will be no stopping, no slowing down. We go until we hit something. Oh nodded. That is exactly what I need. On the screens around them, the remaining 13 hive ships were recovering from the Han River's attack. They were angry now. The swarm did not feel emotion like other beings, but it understood surprise. It understood that something unexpected had happened, and it did not like surprises. The hive ships began to close in on the eternal dawn. How many civilians are in the cargo bay? Taiho asked. Lieutenant Yuna answered. All 40,000. They are scared, Captain. They do not understand what is happening. They do not need to understand. They just need to survive. Taiho stood up from his chair. Separate the cargo bay. Send them toward the asteroid field on the edge of this sector. The rocks will hide them from sensors. Captain, what about us? What about the crew? Taiho looked at her with gentle eyes. The crew, who want to live, can go with the civilians. There are enough escape pods attached to the cargo section. They can help protect the passengers until rescue arrives. And you. Taiho turned to face the main screen. The swarm flagship was directly ahead. The largest hive ship. The one that controlled all the others. If it died, the rest would fall into chaos. I am going to finish what Minho started. The cargo bay separated from the eternal dawn with a series of loud metallic groans. It drifted away slowly at first, then faster as its small thrusters kicked in. Inside, 40,000 civilians held their breath, not knowing if they would live or die. On the bridge of the now crippled Eternal Dawn, only 5 people remained. Taiho, Yuna, Do-Yeon, and 2 other officers who had refused to leave. You should have gone with them, Taiho said quietly. Yuna shook her head. Someone needs to keep this ship flying straight. You are a terrible pilot, Captain. Do-Yeon laughed grimly. And someone needs to make sure the engines do not fail before we reach the target. You need me. Taiho looked at them all. His crew, his family, people who had chosen to die with him rather than live without their honor. Then let us go, he said. Full speed. Aim for the flagship. The Eternal Dawn, empty of its civilians, but full of fury, turned toward the heart of the swarm, and the watching delegates in the Grand Assembly Hall finally understood what they were seeing. This was not desperation. This was not madness. This was spite. Pure, burning, human spite. The Eternal Dawn burned through space like a falling star. Captain Taiho stood at the center of his bridge, watching the swarm flagship grow larger on the screen. It was a massive thing, bigger than any station he had ever seen. Its surface pulsed with dark life, covered in millions of absorbed beings, all working together as one horrible mind. The swarm tried to stop them. Tendrils shot out from nearby hive ships, trying to grab the speeding vessel. Organic projectiles slammed into the hull. Warning lights flashed across every console as system after system failed. Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, Yuna reported. We are losing atmosphere. Does not matter, Taiho said. We only need to fly for another 30 seconds. The flagship loomed ahead, filling the entire screen. Taiho could see the central eye now, the massive organic sensor that connected all the hive ships together. That was the target. Hit that, and the whole fleet would go blind. 10 seconds to impact, Do-Yeon called out. His voice was shaking, but his hands were steady on the console. Reactor is at critical. When we hit, everything goes. Taiho nodded. He looked around at his crew one last time. Yuna was crying silently, but she had not left her post. The others were scared, but they stood firm. These were his people. These were humans. It has been an honor, Taiho said simply. The honor was ours, Captain, Yuna replied. The Eternal Dawn struck the swarm flagship at full speed. The explosion was visible from 100,000 kilometers away. The reactor, overloaded and unstable, released all of its energy in a single moment. The blast tore through the flagship's center, destroying the main eye. Burning through organic systems that had taken centuries to grow, the flagship died. And when it died, its psychic connection to the other ships shattered. 7 more hive ships, caught too close to the blast, were consumed by the fire. They burned in the cold void, their screams echoing across the sector before going silent forever in the Grand Assembly Hall. The delegates sat in shocked silence. 11 hive ships destroyed, 40,000 civilians saved. The cost had been 37 human lives, including Captain Taiho and his remaining crew. But the recording was not finished. The image changed to show the cargo bay, now floating safely in the asteroid field. Inside, the civilians were waking up from emergency cryosleep. They did not know what had happened. They did not know they were alive because people had chosen to die for them. A woman appeared on the screen. Dr. Sora Yoon, the colony's chief medical officer. She was small and soft-spoken, with gentle eyes and careful hands. She had spent her life healing others, saving lives, bringing comfort to the sick and afraid. Now she was doing something different. She stood in front of a communication console, recording a message that would be broadcast on all frequencies. Her voice was calm, but there was iron underneath the softness. "This is the survivors of the Eternal Dawn," she said. 40,000 civilians. We have no weapons. We have no military training. We are doctors and farmers and teachers and children." She paused, and when she continued, her voice was harder. "Dar. Our captain and crew gave their lives to save us. Commander Minho Choi and the crew of the Han River died to buy us time. 37 people who will never see their families again. 37 people who chose to burn rather than let us be taken." Dr. Sora looked directly into the camera. The gentle healer was gone. Something else looked out through her eyes now, to the swarm vessels that remain. "I know you are listening. I know you are thinking about coming for us. Let me tell you what will happen if you do." She held up a small device. It looked medical, harmless, the kind of thing a doctor would carry. Every single person in this cargo bay has volunteered to carry one of these. A modified emergency beacon with a simple addition. If our heart stops, if our brain activity ends, if we are captured and our minds begin to change, this device triggers an incendiary charge. The watching aliens in the Grand Assembly Hall stirred uneasily. They did not understand yet. "You will not take us alive," Dr. Sora continued. "You will not take us intact. Every single one of us, from the oldest grandmother to the youngest child, has agreed to burn rather than become part of you. We have recorded messages for our families. We have made peace with our choice. We are not afraid anymore." Her smile was thin and sharp. "So come for us if you want. But understand this, you will gain nothing. No new bodies, no new minds, no new soldiers for your hive. You will only gain fire and ash and the knowledge that we beat you, that even in death, we won." The recording showed the remaining 6 swarm hive ships floating in space. They had recovered from the blast. They had reformed their psychic connection through a secondary flagship. They were still powerful enough to destroy the cargo. Bay in minutes, but they did not attack. For the first time in the history of the swarm, they did not attack. The swarm was not capable of true thought, but it could calculate. It measured gains against losses. It had always won because living beings valued their lives above all else. They would surrender to avoid death. They would do anything to keep breathing. But these humans had broken that calculation. They did not value survival above all else. They valued something more, something the swarm could not understand. Freedom, pride, spite. If the swarm attacked, it would gain nothing. Just burning meat and broken technology. The cost of victory would be higher than the victory itself. So the swarm did something it had never done before. It left the 6 remaining. Hive ships turned and flew away. The great nightmare that had consumed 11 civilizations retreated from 40,000 for unarmed civilians, but the recording had one final segment. 3 days later, 6 human warships arrived in the Black Veil sector. They were not colony ships or frigates. They were destroyers, heavy cruisers. Vessels built for one purpose only: war. Admiral Jehono stood on the bridge of the lead ship. He was an old man with white hair and cold eyes. He had fought the swarm before. He had lost friends to them. He had been waiting for an excuse. "The swarm attacked our civilians," he said quietly. "They killed our people. They thought they could run away and we would let them go."
Ow.
He looked at his fleet. "Find them. Follow them. Make sure they never threaten anyone ever again." The final image of the recording showed the swarm's core world. It's their original home, their center of power. It was burning. The screen went dark. The recording ended. The lights in the Grand Assembly Hall came back on, revealing 300 alien delegates sitting in absolute silence. High Arbiter Kira turned to face them. Her ancient eyes held something that might have been sadness or might have been respect. "Now," she said softly, "let us discuss the resolution." The Grand Assembly Hall remained silent for a long time. 300 species, thousands of delegates, millions of years of combined wisdom and experience. None of them spoke. None of them moved. They simply sat and tried to understand what they had just witnessed. Ambassador Vel was the first to find his voice. He rose slowly from his seat, his gray skin looking pale and sick under the lights. His 4 hands trembled slightly as he gripped the podium. This changes nothing, he said. His voice was weak, uncertain. Nothing like the confident speech he had given earlier. The humans are still fragile, still short-lived, still primitive by our standards. One act of desperation does not make them worthy of galactic citizenship. High Arbiter Kira looked at him with something close to pity. Is that what you believe you witnessed, Ambassador? An act of desperation? What else could it be? Vel demanded. They were trapped. They had no choice. Any species would fight when cornered. No. The voice came from Delegate Olin, the Bluford Mirathi, who had laughed the loudest at the beginning of this session. He was not laughing now. His fur had turned pale, almost white, a sign of deep fear among his kind. No, that is not what happened. He stood slowly, facing the chamber. I have studied warfare for 300 years. I have seen cornered species. I know what desperation looks like. That was not desperation. He pointed at the now dark screen. The captain of that ship had 4 minutes. He could have used those 4 minutes to record goodbye messages. He could have prayed to whatever gods humans believe in. He could have held his crew and waited for the end. That is what desperate beings do. Olin's voice grew stronger. Instead, he spent those 4 minutes turning his colony ship into a weapon. He separated the civilians, aimed his vessel at the enemy flagship, and flew directly into it. He did not hesitate. He did not cry. He simply did the math and decided that if he was going to die, he would take as many of them with him as possible. The chamber was utterly still. That is not desperation, Olin continued. That is doctrine. That is policy. That is how humans are trained to think. When they cannot win, they make sure the enemy loses too. High Arbiter, Kira nodded slowly. There is an ancient human word for this. It translates poorly into the common tongue, but the closest meaning is spite. The willingness to harm yourself if it means harming your enemy more. She walked to the center of the chamber, her robes flowing behind her like shadows. The Harrow Swarm has existed for over 2,000 years. It has consumed 11 civilizations. It has never been defeated, never been stopped, never even been slowed. Every species that faced them eventually surrendered because they calculated that survival under the swarm was better than death. She paused, looking around at the delegates. The humans broke that calculation, not because they are stronger or smarter or more advanced, but because they value something more than survival. What? Vel asked. What could possibly be worth more than life? Many things, apparently. Kira's smile was sad and ancient. Freedom, honor, the safety of their children, the satisfaction of knowing their enemies will remember them, the simple burning desire to not let the other side win. She turned to face Vel directly. You called them fragile. You are right. They are fragile. They know they are fragile. They live every day knowing that their bodies can fail, their lives can end, their species can be wiped out, and instead of making them afraid, this knowledge has made them dangerous. They have made peace with death, Kira continued. Not because they want to die, but because they have accepted that death comes for everyone eventually. And once you accept death, truly accept it, you become free. Free to fight impossible odds. Free to sacrifice yourself for others. Free to spend your last moments making your enemies choke on their victory. The chamber was silent. The swarm fled, Kira said quietly. For the first time in 2,000 years, the swarm encountered prey that was not worth catching. 40,000 unarmed civilians scared them away because those civilians would rather burn than be taken. She looked at Vel, and the human military arrived. Not to rescue survivors. Not to negotiate. They came to hunt. They followed the swarm to its home world and burned it to ash. Not because they were threatened. Not because they were attacked. Simply because the swarm had hurt their people, and humans do not forgive. Ambassador Vel sat down slowly. He looked old suddenly, older than his species usually appeared. What are you suggesting? He asked that we should fear them? That we should be afraid of these short-lived, fragile creatures? No, Kira said. I am suggesting that you should be very, very careful about making them your enemies. She gestured at the empty screen. You want to ban them from galactic trade? Remove them from diplomatic channels. Push them out of civilized space. And yes, they would survive. They are stubborn enough to build their own networks, their own alliances, their own civilization on the edges of known space. Her voice grew harder. But they would remember. They would remember that when they came to the galaxy with open hands, you slapped them away. They would remember that you laughed at their dead, mocked their biology, treated them as lesser beings. And one day, centuries from now, when you need them, when some new threat appears that only human spite can answer, you will find that they have long memories. She turned to face the entire chamber. So yes, vote to ban them. Remove them from your trade routes. Forbid them from your worlds. But understand what you are truly doing. You are not protecting yourselves from humans. You are making sure that if they ever turn that spite toward you, they will have nothing left to lose. The silence stretched on. Then slowly, Delegate Olin raised his hand. I withdraw my support for Resolution 7742. Another hand went up. Then another. Then dozens. Ambassador Vell watched as his resolution crumbled. He opened his mouth to argue, to protest, to remind them of all the logical reasons why humans were inferior. But no words came. He had seen the video. He had watched the captain smile as he flew his ship into the heart of the swarm. Logic could not argue with that smile. The vote will now proceed, High Arbiter, Kira announced. All in favor of Resolution 7742, banning humanity from the galactic community? Not a single hand rose. All opposed. Every hand in the chamber went up. Resolution 7742 has failed. Unanimously, Kira allowed herself a small smile. The humans will remain members of the galactic community. This session is closed. As the delegates filed out of the Grand Assembly Hall, many of them glanced back at the dark screen where the recording had played. They had come to this meeting feeling superior. They were leaving feeling something else entirely. Not fear exactly, but something close to respect, and perhaps a quiet relief that the strange, fragile, short-lived creatures from the death world called Earth had decided to be their friends instead of their enemies. 3 years later, a young woman named Hannah M. walked into that same Grand Assembly Hall. She was the first human to hold a permanent seat on the Galactic Council. She was small and soft-spoken, with a warm smile and gentle eyes. When asked how she felt about representing such a dangerous species, she only shrugged. We are not dangerous. We just remember what it felt like to be prey, and we made a promise to ourselves. Never again. The other delegates did not ask her to explain. They were too afraid of the answer.